Hello friends. About 99% of friends who watch my videos are not subscribed, and I would be very happy if you did. Also, don't forget to press the like button and leave your comments. Your interaction makes the content reach everyone and helps the channel grow. Also, let me know in the comments from which country you are watching the video. Alright folks, buckle up because what I'm about to tell you ain't no ordinary trucker's tale. This is the kind of story that'll make you think twice before hitting those long, lonely stretches of highway at night. Alright folks, buckle up, because what I'm about to tell you ain't no ordinary trucker's tale. This is the kind of story that'll make you think twice about pulling over on a lonely highway after dark. See, I've been hauling freight for over 20 years and I've seen my fair share of weird stuff out there. Broken down cars with no drivers, hitchhikers who vanish before you can blink, shadows that move just a little too fast under the moonlight. But this was different. This was the kind of thing that sticks to your bones, the kind of nightmare that follows you home and sits heavy in your chest long after you've parked your rig. It started on a stretch of I-80, one of those endless blacktop ribbons cutting through nowhere, Nevada. Just me, my 18-wheeler, and the kind of silence that presses in like a weight. I remember the exact moment it all went wrong. The CB radio had been crackling with static for hours. No truckers on the line, just that empty hiss like the air itself was holding its breath. Then around 2 a.m. I saw her, a woman standing on the shoulder, her dress whipping in the wind like she'd been there for days. Now I ain't the kind to pick up hitchhikers, especially not in the dead of night. But something about her made me slow down. Maybe it was the way she stood too still like a mannequin propped up by invisible strings, or the way her eyes locked onto mine as I rolled past, black, hollow, like two pits dug deep into her skull. I hit the gas, told myself it was just the lack of sleep playing tricks on me. But then the radio suddenly screamed to life, a voice, if you could even call it that, gurgling through the speakers like it was drowning in its own throat. Don't look back. I nearly swerved off the road. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip the wheel. And when I checked my mirrors, she was gone. No footprints in the dirt. No sign she'd ever been there at all. I tried to laugh it off, told myself it was just some prankster messing with the CB, but then the engine started groaning like something was crawling underneath the truck. A thud, then another, like fists pounding against the undercarriage. I white-knuckled it, to the next truck stop, didn't even shut off the engine before I was out of the cab, flashlight in hand, ready to swing at whatever was under there. But there was nothing. Just oil stains and the steady drip of condensation. That's when I noticed the handprints, small, child-sized, smeared in something dark and sticky, trailing from the rear tires all the way to the fuel tank. Now I've hauled everything from livestock to hazardous waste, but I ain't never seen anything like that. The truck stop diner was empty except for a waitress who looked like she'd seen a ghost or two herself. When I asked if anyone else had reported weird stuff on the highway, she just slid my coffee across the counter and said, "You saw her, huh? The lady of I-80. She's been hitchhiking that stretch since the 50s. Problem is, anyone who stops for her, well, they don't make it to the next exit." I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in my cab with the doors locked, staring at the road ahead, praying for sunrise. But the worst part? When I finally pulled out at dawn, the radio crackled one last time. That same wet, choking voice whispering, "You should have looked back," and that was just the beginning. Because whatever that thing was, it wasn't done with me. Over the next few weeks, strange things kept happening. Tools went missing from my rig, only to reappear covered in dirt. My logbook had pages filled with scribbles I didn't write, words like "she's watching" and "the tunnels are hungry." Then there were the dreams. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on that highway. The woman standing in my headlights. Only now her mouth was stitched shut with rusty wire, her fingers elongating into claws as she dragged them down the windshield. I'd wake up gasping, certain I'd heard knocking on the cab door. I started avoiding I-80 altogether, taking longer routes just to steer clear of that cursed stretch of road. But some things don't let you go that easy. One night, hauling a load through Utah, I got rerouted due to a wreck. Guess which highway they sent me down? Yeah, I-80. The second my tires hit that asphalt, the temperature dropped like I'd driven into a freezer. The radio died completely, not even static, just dead air. Then the headlights flickered, and for a split second I saw them. Figures lining the roadside, dozens of them, all standing perfectly still, all facing the highway. And at the front of them, the woman in the dress, only now her mouth wasn't stitched shut anymore. It was stretched wide, too wide, her jaw unhinged like a snake's, and inside wasn't a tongue. It was a hand. A small, pale hand, fingers wriggling like worms, reaching out for me. I don't remember how I got out of there. Next thing I knew, I was at a way station, my rig idling, my shirt soaked through with sweat. The attendant took one look at me and called the medics, thought I was having a heart attack. Maybe I was. But I know what I saw, and I know it wasn't the last time. Because even now, years later, whenever I'm on a long haul and the road gets too quiet, I'll catch something in the corner of my eye, a shadow where there shouldn't be one, a face in the rear view that wasn't there a second ago. And the radio? Sometimes it'll hiss to life when no one's on the channel. Just that same gurgling voice whispering, "She remembers you." So yeah, next time you're driving late at night and you see someone on the side of the road, you do yourself a favor. Keep your eyes forward, your doors locked, and your foot on the gas. Because some hitchhikers aren't looking for a ride, they're looking for something else, and once they find you, well, let's just say you might not be the one telling the story anymore. But hey, that's not even the worst thing that's happened to me out there. If y'all want to hear more, let me know in the comments, because trust me, this was just the tip of the iceberg. There's a reason truckers don't like to talk about what they've seen on the road, and after this, you'll understand why. You'd think after what happened on I-80 I'd have hung up my keys for good, but trucking's in my blood, always has been. Besides, bills don't pay themselves, and no matter how many nightmares I had about that woman in the dress, the road still called to me. So I kept driving, sticking to busier routes, avoiding the lonelier stretches where the darkness felt too thick, too alive. But the thing about the road is, it doesn't matter how careful you are. Sometimes the horror finds you. It was a routine haul, Chicago to Denver, nothing fancy, just a load of auto parts. I'd made this run 100 times, knew every pit, stop, every way station. But this time, something felt off from the second I pulled out of the warehouse. My rig, Old Betty, was running rougher than usual, like something was dragging underneath her. I checked the undercarriage twice, even crawled under with a flashlight, but there was nothing there. Just that same uneasy feeling like I was being watched. Around midnight, just outside Lincoln, Nebraska, I pulled into one of those 24-hour truck plazas to grab some coffee and shake off the weird vibes. The place was mostly empty, just a couple of other rigs parked in the far corners, their drivers probably catching some shut-eye. I filled up my thermos, chatted with the cashier, a kid who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else, and headed back to my truck. That's when I saw it. The sleeper cab door was cracked open. Now I always lock my doors. Always. After what happened on I-80, I wasn't taking any chances. But there it was, open just a sliver, the dim interior light casting a thin yellow line across the seat. My stomach dropped. I set my coffee down slow, grabbed the tire iron I keep by the driver's seat, and crept forward. The lot was dead silent, no wind, no distant highway noise, just the sound of my own breathing as I reached for the door. I yanked it open, iron raised, ready to swing. But the cab was empty. At least that's what I thought at first. Then, I noticed the smell, like wet earth and something rotten, something old. And the sheets on my bunk, they were rumpled like someone had been lying there. No, not just lying. Waiting. I checked every inch of that cab, under the bunk, behind the seats, even the storage compartments, nothing. But the smell didn't fade. If anything, it got stronger, clinging to the back of my throat. I was about to write it off as my nerves when I saw the handprint. On the windshield. Inside. Small like a child's. Smeared in something dark. I touched it. Still damp. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't let anyone in my truck. I hadn't even unlocked the damn door. I booked it out of there so fast I nearly forgot my coffee. Didn't stop driving until the sun was up. Didn't sleep until I hit Denver. Figured whatever was messing with me would stay behind. I was wrong. That night, after unloading, I crashed in a motel off I-76. Exhausted, I fell asleep the second my head hit the pillow. Then, around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of knocking. Not on the door, on the headboard. 3 slow, deliberate raps like someone was standing right over me. I bolted upright, fumbling for the lamp. The room was empty. But on the nightstand, next to my keys, was a single playing card. The ace of spades bent at the corner, like it had been shoved into my pocket without me noticing, and written on it in shaky, childlike letters. You should have looked back. I didn't sleep the rest of that trip. And the worst part? When I got back to my truck the next morning, the sleeper cab door was open again. This time the sheets were pulled back, like something had climbed out. After the sleeper cab incident, I started questioning every shadow, every unexplained noise. But the road doesn't care about your paranoia. It just keeps stretching ahead, pulling you forward whether you like it or not. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head. Maybe the stress was getting to me. Maybe I needed time off. But then came the night on Highway 50, the so-called loneliest road in America. And that's when I realized, some roads don't just feel haunted. Some roads are. It was supposed to be a shortcut. A detour around construction in Utah. Nothing more. I'd taken Highway 50 before. Long, desolate, but peaceful in its emptiness. This time, though, the moment I turned onto it, the air changed. Thicker. Heavier. Like driving through soup. My radio, which had been playing classic rock, cut to static. Then, out of nowhere, a voice crackled through. Not the guttural whisper from before, but an old man's voice, frail and trembling. Turn around, you don't want to cross that bridge, I frowned, grabbing the mic. Who the hell is this? No answer. Just the static rising, then cutting out completely. I should have listened. About 20 miles in, I saw it. A bridge I knew hadn't been there before. Rusted steel, wooden planks, stretching over a ravine so deep I couldn't see the bottom. No signs, no detour markers. Just this ancient, crumbling thing plopped right in the middle of the highway like it had always been there. I slowed to a stop, staring at it. No way was this safe for an 18-wheeler. But when I checked my GPS, it showed the road continuing straight across. No alternate routes, just cross the bridge. I took a breath and eased forward. The second my front tires hit the first plank, the temperature dropped 20 degrees. My breath fogged the windshield. The bridge groaned under the weight, creaking like a dying animal. Halfway across, the headlights flickered, and that's when I saw them. Figures. Dozens of them. Standing, shoulder to shoulder along the edges of the bridge, their faces gaunt, their clothes tattered. Not moving. Not breathing. Just watching as I rolled past. My hands clenched the wheel. Don't stop, don't look, just drive. Then, thump. Something landed on the roof of the cab. I flinched, my heart hammering. Another thump, then another, like someone crawling across the top of the truck. Then, screech. The sound of nails dragging along the passenger side window. I didn't look. I couldn't look. The bridge seemed to stretch forever, the figures multiplying, their hollow eyes tracking me. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the cab lurched. The back tires hit solid pavement. I was across. I didn't slow down. Didn't check the mirrors. Just ran. When I finally pulled into a gas station an hour later, shaking so bad I could barely pump fuel, the attendant gave me a weird look. You all right, buddy? I swallowed hard. That bridge back on 50, the old steel one. How long's it? Been there? He stared at me like I'd lost my mind. Ain't no bridge on 50. Not for 50 miles, least. I showed him on the GPS. The route was there, clear as day, crossing the ravine. He paled. Son, that bridge burned down in 1983. Took a school bus full of kids with it. They say if you drive that stretch at night, sometimes it comes back. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that, and the worst part? When I finally checked my truck in the daylight, There were tiny handprints everywhere, on the roof, on the windows, even on the inside of the windshield, like something had been peering in. By this point, I was starting to think the road had it out for me. Every mile felt like a gamble, every rest stop a potential trap. But like I said before, trucking's in my blood, and bills don't pay themselves. So there I was, hauling a load of refrigerated freight through the back roads of West Virginia, taking the scenic route to avoid way stations after my logbook had mysteriously gone missing. Again. The trees pressed in close on either side of the road, their branches scraping against the trailer like skeletal fingers. The GPS had cut out an hour ago, but I wasn't worried. I've got a damn good sense of direction. That's when I saw him. Kid. Couldn't have been more than 12, standing under a flickering street lamp in the middle of nowhere, thumb out like he was hitchhiking. Now, I don't pick up hitchhikers, not after what happened on I-80. But something about this kid made me slow down. Maybe it was the way he was dressed, jeans and a striped t-shirt like something out of the 1950s. Or maybe it was the fact that he was barefoot in November. I rolled down the window. "You lost, kid?" He didn't answer at first, just stared at the ground, his shoulders hunched. When he finally looked up, my stomach dropped. His eyes were solid black. No whites, no pupils. Just two dark, empty pits. "Can you take me home?" His voice was wrong, too deep, too gravelly for a child. I've been waiting a long time. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to hit the gas. But before I could, he reached into his pocket and pulled something out. A toy truck, one of those old tin ones from the 50s, rusted and dented. "You dropped this," he said. I'd never seen that truck before in my life. Then he smiled, and I swear to God his teeth were sharp. I stomped on the accelerator so hard the trailer fishtailed. In the rearview mirror I saw him still standing there under the street lamp. Only now, he wasn't alone. Two more figures had appeared beside him, their eyes just as black, their smiles just as wrong. I drove until the sun came up, my hands welded to the wheel. When I finally stopped to check my cargo, the refrigeration unit was dead. The inside of the trailer was freezer cold, the walls covered in frost, and written in the frost in jagged, childlike letters, "You should have stayed." I delivered that load 3 hours late. The receiver didn't even blink at the frost, just signed the paperwork and said, "Rough night, huh?" I didn't answer, because sitting on his desk was a rusted tin truck, and it hadn't been there when I walked in. After the black-eyed kid, I started carrying a Bible in my glove box. Not that I'm a particularly religious man, but when you've seen the things I've seen, you start covering your bases. Salt over the shoulder, never parking near graveyards, avoiding certain truck stops that just feel wrong. But the road has a way of finding you no matter what precautions you take. This time, it was in Arizona. I was hauling a load of furniture from Phoenix to Albuquerque, taking the long way to avoid a storm system. The desert at night is a different kind of quiet. Not like the heavy silence of the Midwest, but a vast, empty stillness that makes you feel like you're the last person on Earth. Around 2 a.m., I noticed my odometer wasn't moving. I'd been driving for what felt like hours, but the mileage stayed frozen at 237,891. At first, I thought it was a glitch, but then I saw the exit sign. Nowhere, 1 mile. Now, I've driven every inch of I-40 more times than I can count, and I can tell you with absolute certainty, there is no exit for Nowhere, Arizona. The off-ramp appeared out of nowhere, a crumbling stretch of asphalt leading into darkness. And sitting at the base of the exit sign was a little girl in a yellow sundress, rocking back and forth like she was crying. I know. After everything, I should have kept driving. But something about her got to me. Maybe it was the way her shoulders shook. Maybe it was the fact that she couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Against every screaming instinct in my body, I pulled over. "You okay, sweetheart?" I called through the open window. She stopped rocking, slowly, so slowly, her head tilted up. Her face was smooth. No eyes, no nose, no mouth, just blank, featureless skin. Then she split open, her head peeling apart like a rotten fruit, revealing row after row of needle-thin teeth. I didn't even remember putting the truck in gear. Next thing I knew, I was doing 90 down I-40, my hands shaking so bad I could barely steer. That's when the CB crackled to life. "Hey, there, driver," came a cheerful voice. "You missed your exit." I glanced at the mirror. The little girl was sitting in my sleeper cab. Her sundress was now stained red, and she was holding my missing logbook. "Don't worry," she giggled. "We'll take the next one together." My hands were still shaking when I finally saw the glow of neon up ahead. A diner, the kind of greasy spoon that only exists in the middle of nowhere. The sign flickered, "Open 24 HRS" in buzzing pink letters, and right then it looked like heaven. I needed coffee. I needed to be around other people. And most of all, I needed that thing out of my truck. I slammed on the brakes so hard the trailer groaned in protest. The second the wheels stopped moving, I threw open the door and practically fell out of the cab, not even bothering to shut it behind me. The desert air hit me like a slap, dry and too hot for midnight, carrying the scent of sagebrush and something faintly metallic. The diner was nearly empty. An old man hunched over the counter, nursing a cup of coffee. A tired-looking waitress, wiping down tables, and in the far corner booth, a group of truckers playing cards. Normal. Safe. The bell jingled when I walked in. Everyone looked up. Then every single face went blank. The old man's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, shattering on the linoleum. The waitress dropped her rag. The truckers froze mid-deal, their cards suspended in air. You, the waitress whispered, pointing at me. There's someone in your truck." I turned slowly. Through the diner's plate glass window, I could see my rig parked under the buzzing neon, and sitting in the passenger seat, clear as day, was the little girl. Her featureless face was pressed against the glass, smearing something dark. One small hand lifted in a slow, mocking wave. Then the diner's lights went out. When they flickered back on, she was gone. The old man at the counter was crying. "That's the third time this month," he whispered. "Always the same. Always the sundress." I didn't stay for coffee. 2 days later, somewhere in New Mexico, I picked up a new load. Miscellaneous household goods, the shipping manifest said. Standard LTL freight. But when I did my pre-trip inspection, something felt off. The trailer lock was already broken. Inside, instead of stacked boxes, I found a single wooden crate. No markings, no shipping label. Just the faint smell of wet earth and something sweet underneath, like rotting fruit. I should have refused the load. I didn't. That night, parked at a rest stop outside Amarillo, I heard the scratching, slow, deliberate, coming from inside the trailer. I told myself it was rats. Then the banging started, not random pounding, rhythmic, like someone knocking in code. 3 quick taps, 2 slow ones, then 3 quick again. SOS. Wasn't alone at the rest stop. Another rig was parked across the lot, an old freightliner with its running lights on. Another driver meant safety, maybe even answers. I approached cautiously, flashlight in hand. "Hey there, partner. You hearing this?" The cab was empty, but the engine was running. A half-drunk coffee sat in the cup holder, still steaming. And on the dash, someone had drawn a symbol in the condensation. A crude eye with too many lashes. Under it, in dripping letters, "She's watching." The delivery address took me to an abandoned industrial park outside Oklahoma City. Chain-link fences sagging, weeds pushing through cracked pavement. And at the center, a warehouse with every single window blacked out. My GPS insisted this was the place. The warehouse door creaked open before I could knock. Inside, it wasn't a distribution center, it was a church, pews made from stacked pallets, an altar of crates, and lining the walls, dozens of those same unmarked wooden boxes from my trailer. Something moved in the shadows. "Took you long enough," a voice rasped. Then hands grabbed me from behind. The flashlight beam revealed them, maybe 20 people in trucker caps and flannel, their eyes glassy, their movements jerky like puppets on strings. At the front stood a woman in a familiar sundress. Only now I could see the stitches where her face had been sewn back on. "We've been waiting," she said through blackened teeth. The road always collects its dues. Then the crate lids began to rattle. The first box burst open in a shower of splinters. What crawled out wasn't human. Not anymore. It wore a trucker's uniform, or what was left of one. The patches were faded, the fabric stained with old blood and motor oil. Its face was stretched too wide, the skin splitting at the corners of a mouth that kept unhinging farther than should be possible. One by one, the other. Crates opened. I recognized some of them. The old man from the diner, the card players, the driver of the freightliner, all twisted, all wrong, all staring at me with the same hungry black eyes. They forced me to my knees in front of a makeshift altar, an old truck battery with cables leading to a jerry-rigged CB radio. The woman in the sundress pressed a rusted mic to my lips. "Say hello," she whispered. Static exploded from a dozen radios at once. Then a voice, my voice but distorted, like it was being played backward, gurgled through the speakers. "Help me, help me, help me." It was the transmission I'd sent the night on I-80, the night everything started. The congregation began chanting, not in English, but in something older, something that made my teeth vibrate. The woman leaned close, her breath smelling of diesel and decay. "You took something that didn't belong to you," she hissed. "Now the road wants payment." I suddenly remembered, really remembered, that first night. The woman on I-80 hadn't been hitchhiking. She'd been chasing something small, something that had crawled under my truck, and I'd driven away with it. The twisted truckers were closing in, their hands reaching, mouths gaping. The woman pressed a rusted knife into my palm. "You can join us," she said, "or you can feed us." Outside, my rig's engine roared to life by itself. The headlights flickered twice. Then the high beams came on, illuminating a small figure standing in the warehouse doorway. The black-eyed kid, holding a toy truck. Smiling. I ran. Not toward the exit, toward my truck. The congregation howled behind me, their bones cracking as they gave chase. I hit the gas just as the first grasping hands reached the trailer. The CB screamed to life. "Wrong choice, wrong choice, wrong choice." Then the radio dial spun by itself, landing on a frequency that shouldn't. "Kine," a child's voice whispered. "Thank you for the ride, mister." In the mirror, the warehouse was gone, but the weight in my trailer felt heavier, and in the sleeper cab something was laughing. I drove for 3 days straight. Didn't stop, didn't sleep. The logs would be screwed, but I didn't care anymore. Every time I checked the mirrors, the sleeper curtains moved. Every time I hit a bump, I heard giggling from the trailer. And every time I closed my eyes, even for a second, the CB would crackle. Are we there yet? The GPS had stopped working entirely. No matter which way I turned, the screen just showed one word: closer. The way station appeared like a mirage, a tiny concrete bunker in the middle of nowhere. No lights, no attendants, just a scale and a single black door marked deliveries. My brakes squealed as I stopped. The trailer doors swung open on their own. From the darkness inside came a sound like 100 children whispering at once. Home. The weight lifted. For the first time in weeks, my rig felt empty. Then the CB spoke one last time in my own voice, but from years ago. "Don't look back." I did. The road behind me was gone, just gone. And sitting on the passenger seat was a toy truck. The odometer read 6666666. The fuel gauge was on E, and the clock? It had stopped at 3:07 a.m., the exact time this nightmare began. Epilogue. They found me 3 days later, wandering along I-80. My rig was discovered abandoned in Arizona, exactly where I'd first picked up that damned load. The doctors say it was heat stroke. The company wrote it up as sleep deprivation, but every trucker who hears my story gets quiet because they know. The road takes what it's owed. And my bill? It's not paid yet. The doctors released me after 72 hours of observation, dehydration, exhaustion. Highway hypnosis, they called it. But as I signed my discharge papers, the nurse hesitated. "Mister, your eyes—" She trailed off, handing me a small mirror. My pupils were blown wide, the irises nearly swallowed by black. "It's just the light," I lied, pocketing the mirror. But I knew the truth. Something had followed me out of that warehouse. The trucking company had impounded my rig, but the foreman handed me the keys without meeting my gaze. "Ain't no one touched it," he muttered. Couldn't get the doors open. When I climbed into the cab, the stench of rotting fruit hit me like a fist. The sleeper berth curtains were drawn tight, though I'd left them open. And on the dashboard, freshly drawn in the dust, was that same symbol, the lidless eye with too many lashes. The engine turned over on the first try. The CB crackled. "Missed us?" Dispatch assigned me a easy milk run, Phoenix to Flagstaff. But when I backed up to the loading dock, the workers moved too slowly, their faces slack. The pallets they loaded weren't dairy cases, but the same unmarked wooden crates from before. "Manifest says perishables," the loader droned, his breath smelling of wet soil. When he smiled, his gums were black. I nearly refused the load until I saw her, the woman in the sundress, standing at the far end of the dock. Only now her stitches had burst, revealing glimpses of that terrible, tooth-filled void beneath. She raised one hand and pointed at my trailer. The temperature in the cab dropped 20 degrees. On the GPS, my destination had changed to coordinates. In the middle of the desert, the scales glowed red in the twilight as I pulled in. No attendants. Just a speaker box that crackled. "Step out for inspection." The moment my boots hit the pavement, the trailer doors burst open. Not empty. Not full of crates. A forest. Dense pines stretched into impossible darkness inside my 53-foot trailer, the scent of pine needles and something metallic pouring out. From the depths came a child's giggle, the same one I'd heard at the warehouse. The speaker box screamed, "Overweight, overweight." Then the trailer doors slammed shut by themselves. Tore open the shipping paperwork. The bill of lading was written in that same childish scrawl. Item 1, 1 sole, slightly used. Item 2, 7 nightmares, lightly worn. Item 3, the sound of your own screaming, returned for credit. At the bottom, stamped in what looked like blood, road. Tax paid in full. The highway signs started changing. Exit 144, your childhood home exit, 233. The day you died, exit 666. Last chance to turn back. My rig's speedometer needle spun wildly even as the engine idled. The CB alternated between sobbing and that terrible wet laughter. And in the sleeper berth, something heavy shifted position every time I checked the mirrors. Then came the worst sound of all, 3 soft knocks from inside the glove box. The delivery address was a dead-end road in the Mojave. A shack stood. At the end, its porch lined with toy trucks. The woman in the sundress waited by the door, now missing half her face. "Payments due," she said, holding out a clipboard. The invoice listed everything. First encounter, I-80, 17 sleepless nights, near misses with sanity, all remaining hope, balance due. I reached for the pen. The CB in my truck screamed, "She lies!" The ground beneath us trembled. The toy trucks began rolling toward me of their own accord. And from the trailer came a sound like 1,000 children whispering, "Drive." I don't know how I got away. One moment I was facing that stitched together horror. The next I was barreling down Highway 93 with my high beams on, the trailer doors flapping like wounded birds. The GPS now shows only 2 words. Not far enough. Every rest stop I pass is empty, every way station dark. And every time I check the mirrors, the reflection shows someone else in the passenger seat. Sometimes the black-eyed child, sometimes the stitched woman, sometimes a version of myself with hollow sockets where my eyes should be. But the worst part? The deliveries never end. The manifests keep appearing. And the odometer, it started counting backward. The dashboard clock had been stuck at 3:07 a.m. for 17 days. 17 days of empty highways, of truck stops where the coffee tasted, like ashes and the other drivers never quite met my eyes. 17 days of that damn whispering in my trailer. I pulled into a Petro outside Albuquerque. my hands shaking from lack of sleep. The fluorescent lights buzzed like angry wasps as I shuffled inside. The cashier, a pimple-faced kid with a name tag that read Jeremy, barely glanced up from his phone. "Filling up?" he mumbled. I opened my mouth to answer when I saw it. Behind the counter, reflected in the security mirror, stood the little girl in the yellow sundress. Only now her dress was stained with something dark and her black eyes were fixed on Jeremy. I lunged across the counter, knocking over a display of beef jerky. "Get down!" Jeremy yelped as I dragged him to the floor. The lights flickered violently. The security monitor showed every pump outside erupting in geysers of gasoline, the thick liquid snaking across the pavement toward my rig. Then the CB in my pocket crackled to life. "She's hungry." I woke up in my rig, parked at the same pump. No spilled gasoline. No Jeremy. The station looked abandoned, weeds pushing through cracks in the pavement. The fuel gauge read full. On the passenger seat sat a greasy paper bag. Inside, a cold cheeseburger. And a toy truck identical to the one in my glove box. The receipt was dated 1983. The radio scanned through stations on its own before landing on a preacher's rant. "And the beast shall come riding on wheels of fire, his chariot fed by the souls of the faithless." I turned it off. The speaker continued, whispering. Outside Flagstaff I saw him. The black-eyed kid stood beneath a dead traffic light, his striped shirt faded, his bare feet black with road grime. This time he held a sign, "Anywhere but here." I floored it. The rig shuddered but didn't accelerate. The kid kept pace effortlessly, walking calmly down the center line as my speedometer needle trembled at 85. Then he was in the cab with me, his rotting fruit breath hot on my neck. "You should have stopped last time," he whispered. His fingers, too long, too many joints, tapped the odometer. The numbers clicked backward rapidly. 66 600. The CB screamed, "Wrong way!" The all-night diner smelled of burnt coffee and despair. The waitress, Linda according to her name tag, poured me a cup without asking. Her wrists were wrapped in bandages. "You're the third driver this week," she said, nodding toward my rig. "The others, they ain't talking much anymore." Through the window I saw them, 3 men sitting motionless in a booth, their hands folded, around untouched meals. Their eyes were sewn shut with what looked like fishing line. Linda leaned close. "There's a place up near Gallup. Old Indian burial ground they paved over for the interstate. At night sometimes, the road forgets what it is." She pressed a napkin into my hand. Drawn in ketchup was a crude map. The cook dropped a plate. When I looked back, Linda's bandages had come undone. Beneath them, tiny handprints burned into her flesh. The exit wasn't on any map. Just a crumbling off-ramp marked with a single, rusted, "So now leaving reality." The pavement gave way to packed earth as I descended. The trees here grew at impossible angles, their branches scraping the trailer like skeletal fingers. My headlights reflected off hundreds of pairs of eyes lining the road. Deer, maybe. Though deer don't usually stand on 2 legs. The GPS sputtered, recalculating, you are here." Then the screen filled with static. When it cleared, a single word appeared, "Run." The building looked like a cross between a 1950s diner and a medieval chapel. The neon sign buzzed. "Open God isn't inside." The air smelled of incense and diesel. A man in a trucker cap sat at the counter, his face hidden by shadows. When he spoke, his voice was the same one from the CB. "You took something that wasn't yours." He slid a Polaroid across the Formica. The photo showed my rig parked on I-80 that first night. Beneath the trailer, a small pale hand reaching out from the darkness. The walls began bleeding then. Not blood, but black oil that formed words as it dripped. "Payment past due." The trucker stood, revealing eyes like polished obsidian. "You got 2 options, son. Keep running, and she'll chase you till the wheels fall off." He produced a rusted knife. "Or you can cut her loose." Outside, my trailer began shaking violently. The doors bulged inward as something pounded from inside. The little girl's laughter echoed through the walls. The CB crackled. Decide, decide, decide. The voice warping unnaturally on the last word. Reached for the knife. The lights went out. The trailer doors burst open with a sound like a dying animal. Inside, not cargo, but a tunnel stretching into impossible darkness. From its depths came the stitched woman, crawling on all fours, her jaw unhinging wider than any humans should. Behind her, hundreds of figures shuffled forward, the congregation from the warehouse, their mouths sewn shut with the same fishing line I'd seen at the diner. The knife burned in my hand. The black-eyed trucker whispered, "Cut the cord." I saw it then, a thin, pulsing umbilical stretching from my rig's undercarriage into the tunnel. It throbbed like a living thing. The first slice sent up a spray of black ichor. The second made the earth tremble. The third. The scream wasn't human. It came from everywhere at once. The CB, the engine, the very pavement beneath us. The stitched woman lunged, her fingers elongating into talons. I brought the knife down one final time. The cord snapped with a sound like 1,000 radios tuning to static. The tunnel collapsed inward, dragging the woman and her congregation with it. The last thing I saw before the door slammed shut was the little girl, her black eyes wide with betrayal as she mouthed, "You were supposed to take us home." Epilogue. The open road. They found my rig abandoned near Gallup, the engine still running, the odometer frozen at $0,000. The trailer was empty except for three things: a toy truck with one broken wheel, a Polaroid of a road stretching into forever. The doctor said I was lucky to be alive when they found me wandering along Route 66, covered in dust and babbling about black-eyed children and highways to hell. They diagnosed me with extreme sleep deprivation and highway psychosis, gave me pills that made the world soft at the edges. But I knew the truth. The road had let me go. For a while I tried to live normal, got a job at a parts store, rented, a little apartment where the walls didn't whisper. But every night at exactly 3:07 a.m., the old CB radio I'd kept as a souvenir would crackle to life with that same wet static. And if I listened close enough, I could hear them. The congregation, their stitched mouths humming some awful hymn just beyond the frequency of human hearing. Then came the night of the storm. The power went out around midnight. Lightning painted my bedroom walls in strobes of blue-white. That's when I saw her standing at the foot of my bed. The little girl in the yellow sundress, only now her dress was made of the same material as highway caution signs, her black eyes reflecting the lightning like polished onyx. "You forgot something," she said, holding out my old trucker logbook. The pages were filled with names I didn't recognize, drivers who'd disappeared on lonely stretches of road going back to the 1940s. The last entry was my own, written in that same childish scrawl, "Delivery incomplete." The CB exploded with static, so loud it knocked pictures off the walls. Through the window I saw my old rig idling in the parking lot, its headlights cutting through the rain. The trailer doors gaped open like a hungry mouth. The girl smiled, showing teeth too sharp and too many. Time to finish the route. I should have run, should have fought. But after all those miles, all those horrors, I finally understood. Some roads only go one way. I took her hand. The last thing I heard before the darkness took me was the CB whispering my final manifest. Load, one soul, slightly used. Destination, the end of the line notes. Keep the engine running, they never found my body. Just the CB radio, still warm to the touch, tuned to a dead channel that somehow kept transmitting. If you listen late at night, when the highways are empty and the moon hangs low, you might hear it too. The faint sound of diesel engines and something far worse, rolling ever onward down that endless blacktop. So the next time you're driving, some lonely stretch of road and your headlights catch a figure standing just outside their beam, remember my story. And whatever you do, don't stop driving.